I'm Maria Menounos, and you're tuned in to AfterBuzz TV, the ESPN of TV talk. Now, let the buzz begin.
Hey, everybody. It's Lauren Kling. Welcome to another episode of What We Do in the Shadows After Show here on AfterBuzz TV. I am joined by always, as my cohort in this venture, Kevin Allen. How are you, Kevin?
Hey, I'm doing well. Thank you. How are you?
I'm good. And hello to everybody in the chat room who is joining us live. Apologies, we started a few minutes late, but you already have some great discussion going on. Mm-hmm. Kevin and I will be happy to break down this episode and then talk to you about what you're talking about. But yeah, let's start, Kevin, with Celeste.
You want to start with Celeste?
Let's just go right into, because when I see Celeste, I'm like, I'm in LA. I'm going to these art shows that are at warehouses in downtown LA. It got me very excited and kind of missing those quirky little nuggets of life.
Oh, see, my context for this was an episode of High Fidelity that I covered for AfterBuzz earlier last year. And where someone showed up at an influencer party, not realizing that's what it was. The whole thing was like a rented studio space for a bunch of fake people who don't know each other to take Instagram photos. And that's what I thought that was. Like, as soon as he gets to her abode and there's all this artwork of someone who's not her, I was like, this just smells of fake. But I still didn't catch that's what was actually happening.
Got it. So we've all had our own warehouse experiences. If anybody in chat wants to talk about their crazy warehouse experiences, of course, raves were the thing back in the 90s. And I'm excited to talk about 90s vampire movies in my special segment today. So let's go. We'll come back to Celeste. Okay. I think, Kevin, you really want to talk about the hidden musical talents of Laszlo and Nadja, don't you?
How could I not? To find out that they have been songwriters all this time, like this secret pastime of theirs that they've just been saving for a rainy day. Yeah, that was surprising. And after meeting Jackie Daytona, I was like, okay, he might be in like the folk or country music scene. And kind of folky, like, you know, a traditional 18th century sea shanty, you know, kind of way.
Right. But they didn't refer to his alter ego, so it was interesting.
Yeah, it was just a hobby that I guess they had, and it's weird because he seemed shocked that the songs he wrote went places. So he didn't really pursue them, but he was as proud of them because, like, one of them he said he got off the ground that everyone knew. Oh, he's a jolly good fellow. He's like, oh, that was my song. I'm a jolly good fellow.
Well, 1982's "Come On Eileen" was a ripoff of his song "Chum on Irene," because there was "Chum on Irene," and then
which I will say this: when he announced that I wrote that song, I went, "Of course he did." Didn't think he changed the words.
I know, so many great songs. I did write the lyrics to one of them. Sing it with me now, Kevin. Stroke, stroke, stroke your cock. Hurry, make it cream. Merrily, 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 merrily. Life could use more cream.
Cream, yeah.
And then Nadja says, I love how he rhymes cream with cream.
Unexpected. Bold.
Totally out of nowhere. So yeah, it's interesting that we've got these two who are musical endeavors. Now, I assumed that they would have great voices. So I was really surprised when they went to the Chop House for the open mic, how bad they were.
I am too. Like, I mean, granted, we haven't heard Nadja sing, but I gave her the benefit of the doubt because they've had so much time to practice this gift. Yeah. But for Laszlo, I mean, Matt Berry's voice is liquid gold. Like, nobody sounds as regal or perfectly robust when they speak as Matt Berry. So I expected him to have the just grandest of singing voices, and I was very disappointed.
Yeah, and I was disappointed as well. I'm like, okay, so they're using this as a basis to save themselves when they sing the Beach Boys' Kokomo. But I was really expecting and hoping that they would be amazing, talented musicians.
Well, and it's not that they were bad talents, but together, like, his voice and her voice just didn't really go together.
Yeah.
I think that was the real issue, mostly.
Yeah. Maybe what it was, it felt like it turned into a Saturday Night Live sketch.
Oh man, I kept thinking about that because I know that improvisation is an element of how they do the show. It is scripted and they usually follow it, but they throw in their own flair. And so when he was practicing a song with her, the lyrics that they were coming up with on the fly, or at least to me, sounded like they were on the fly, but it was so on the melody. I was like, well, I know they didn't fake that part, so it was hard to say what was just spur of the moment inspiration and what was written.
Yeah, I know. Luckily for us, our shows are pre-scripted.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, hold on. Turn the page. And then, oh yeah, there we go.
Billie Jean Girl, Mr. Q.
Oh, Billie Jean did? Okay.
Yeah.
I know.
We'll
You can never think
in the edit.
Yeah, can never think of it in the same way. So let's go from there to Nandor and Guillermo.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to wrap my head around our predictions with Guillermo. And I think I'm most surprised that Guillermo did not start killing all of the vampires at Celeste's art room or art warehouse.
Well, they weren't vampires. They were all familiars, including her.
Wait, the little girl. No,
we're talking about when that crew busted in.
Yeah, when the crew busts in, she's the familiar to the young girl. I assumed Guillermo would start killing them all.
But it was a trio of like 11-year-old girls, which one of them alone is terrifying. So seeing them in a pack like that,
true,
and they're all like fevered up. I appreciate that he did take priorities and got Sam out of there safely.
Yeah.
That's what I was most concerned about. But yeah, now that you mention it, because his reaction skills have been honed greatly over this season. So you'd think that he would snap into. However, now that I think about it, there was nothing in that room in which to impale them with. Like it was a very sparse
artwork. Room. No couch artwork.
But even the artwork didn't have frames.
Yeah.
It was just there. What's a DJ table and that's it.
Yeah. What's interesting though is Guillermo really wants to be a vampire. He's been with Nandor for 11 years. And it's interesting that as much as he is a vampire killer, his lifelong goal is to be a vampire. And so it's touching in a way that we see these two sides of Guillermo.
What I thought was interesting about this, because you're all right, that like it was really nice to see that be tested fully. Like him being a slayer and having slayer blood is obviously opposing his goal thematically, but it's not actually getting in the way of his goal. So he very much can still pursue that while having Van Helsing instincts. Right. But this was the first episode that we saw where that was directly challenged. Like he brought it up to Nandor. Nandor did not give him a yes. He took it as an insult, and their relationship got even further apart. Not to mention Benji's arrival,
yes.
Like being evidence that you are not going to get what you want. So
right.
Everything about his perseverance in going after his dream was challenged this episode. And you saw how much it got to him and that he really does want this despite everything.
Nandor is not easy to love. And maybe perhaps it's because he's been a brutal murderer through his entire life.
Well, this is what I was going to say. The thing I found interesting from this episode was we've always taken Guillermo and Nandor's relationship at face value. Right. And Guillermo meets other familiars who like, oh, you're familiar? Yeah, I've been doing it for a couple months. I'm doing it for a couple years. How long are you? 10 years. Oh my God, 10 years? You're still doing it? And everyone that he's talked to about how long he's been doing it has kind of given him this look of like, you're the fool here. But we've never met anybody who has been a familiar who has been sired. And we finally meet that Celeste. Well, it turns out to be a sham.
Right.
She's not siring anybody. So that motif of that vampires do not sire their familiars has been reinforced by Nandor having Benji come back, by Celeste not doing it when she's being a fake vampire, and by Celeste's master not turning her. And I think the Celeste example shows that it's not really just like a vampire thing that they just all like agreed, like, hey, we're not going to turn anyone. That it's just like a power trip thing that anybody can fall for. But the fact remains the same. We haven't seen anybody who has been turned. And I doubt Guillermo ever will be now.
Oh, interesting. Interesting. It does kind of feel like internships, the way internships used to be, where somebody was more than happy to bring you on for free to work for them. But when
Mhm.
it comes time to wanting to actually get paid for the work, oftentimes they'd be like, there's thousands of other people, hundreds of other people that would do that, do this job. I don't need you. So it's interesting. You bring up some interesting points. I wanted to mention Taylor in
Mhm.
the chat says, if the vampires were the only ones in the room, I think Guillermo would have killed them, but not in a room full of familiars.
Oh,
So
that is a good point.
yeah,
That is a good point.
and
Um,
it's true. Guillermo kind of poo-pooed the monthly familiar meetups. He's been there before, but he didn't really, he thought it was just everybody complaining. So he kind of
well,
sees himself above other familiars, although he's been one for 11 years.
yeah, and he's always had that attitude, and that's why, because he has the life experience. But in that scene with Benji, Benji's talking with his old familiar buddies who are also his age or older. So you had a
Yeah,
guy in the room who was like 80 or 90 being like, well, I'm going to get turned first because I've been around longer.
right.
He's like 90. No one's getting turned, guys. No one.
Yeah.
Celeste is only furthering this facade that vampires turn their familiars. It's all a ruse, yo.
Yeah.
It's all a game.
Yeah. Billie Jean says in the movie, a familiar got turned into a vampire. Now, I got to say, I started with the movie. It's been a couple years, so I don't remember what happened in the movie, but
She, you're half right, Billy. It wasn't a familiar who got turned. It was the familiar's friend, I believe. It was that guy. Um, oh God, because the familiar in the movie was a woman, a woman in her 40s who had a family and kept being told this promise of I'm going to turn, but her years
right.
are going by. And then the guy who actually got turned was just this young dude who showed up by accident. I think he was invited over maybe as an sacrifice, and was turned by accident. Similarly to Jenna's situation in this show, the
Yes.
vampires
Yes.
have turned someone, but it wasn't a familiar.
Right. Right. I'm wondering if she's going to be back. Again, I think this kind of brings up the idea of what's going to happen to Jenna. What's going to happen to Guillermo?
I honestly thought Jenna was what opened the episode, because in my perspective, it was an invisible force attacking a guy in the park,
Uh
and then
huh.
we realized it was Laszlo as a bat. So
Yeah. Because
I
he's like,
forget how it happened, but I
yeah,
thought it was Jenna. So I was like, oh, good, she's back, but still gonna wait. Still gonna wait to see
right.
what she's up to.
Right. So I'm assuming that the man turned, that Laszlo jumped in the middle of him enjoying him. He hears the song.
Mhm.
Um, but we don't know if this guy's getting turned or not.
This is where I'd refer to Billy because I don't remember the process of how someone gets turned in this.
Yeah. So, anything else you want to talk about before we move on to news and special segments?
Um, I liked seeing Nandor finally open up. My girlfriend's been saying it all season long that she really did not like Nandor going into this season. And something about him over this season, he's become, I don't know if it's more relatable, but that he's become more endearing, and having the catchphrase now, a fucking guy, like helps with that. But it was really nice to see him start to actually appreciate Guillermo. This was very much Guillermo's episode, and a large part of that I think was his relationship with Nandor. And I honestly don't expect a lot of change from
Right.
Nandor, but the gesture was made, and so I do appreciate that.
Yeah, and I think as I said earlier, Nandor doesn't know how to love. So,
That's
this is all new for him, and we're kind of seeing him trying to reluctantly learn. And also Guillermo has not stood up for himself for 11
yeah,
years.
this was the first time.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Well, we'll get to predictions.
Yeah, it is. And we'll talk about Guillermo's pillow that he got. His lovemaking pillow. So, all right, let's move on to news with Kevin Allen.
So the big news story this week is that What We Do in the Shadows has been renewed for a 3rd season.
Yay!
It's official. It's happening. FX is really happy with the show, and I'm not surprised because I feel like within the past couple of weeks, there's definitely been an uptick in viewership. I have friends who, finding out that we host this after show, commenting, "Oh, I just started it yesterday," and it's more and more people are jumping on the bandwagon.
Good.
In fact, the numbers are out. There is a 25% more viewership in this season than there was in season 1. So Nick Grad, the president of original programming for FX, said that we're incredibly happy that critics and audiences are all in on Shadows week in and week out. The producers, writers, and our amazing cast continue to make one of the funniest and best comedy series on TV, and I wholeheartedly agree. As for what season 3 entails, we know nothing. We expect a lot of the same thing, that it will be back in March of 2021, though COVID could be preventing some of that. It's too early to tell, and it's too far out to see if it'll matter. We don't know what cast members are going to return. We expect it's going to be the whole cast. Why wouldn't it be? But who's to say that Guillermo doesn't stake everyone at the season finale and we start with a whole new group on Staten Island?
Got it.
There's no saying, and I, for one, am excited by that.
Yes, and I love seeing all the special guests. The actors that have come in are amazing, whether or not they're well known, like a Mark Hamill. I just love how they've brought in these amazing cast of characters.
I think it's a miracle that they got as many as they did for season 1. Just like straight out of the gate, they got all these people that they wanted, with the exception of maybe Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt.
Right.
But the whole slew of people they got for the council is amazing. To get Mark Hamill and Haley Joel Osment and all these Benedict Wong, it's great. And so yes, I absolutely expect more of that in the show. The show not only has it become more popular with audiences, but it already had a 94% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. So this show is kind of the show to be on now. It reminds me of when Batman in 1966 was the show that every actor wanted to do a guest appearance on. I feel because it's just fun. It's just a fun show to be on.
Right.
I have a feeling What We Do in the Shadows is the same thing now.
Some people might be too young to remember the time when people that were in movies wanted nothing to do with television. Television was considered a less than medium. And so you would never see a celebrity like a George Clooney or Brad Pitt on TV. I just saw, my wife and I just saw a reality show with Brad Pitt. Oh my gosh, it was one where they were rebuilding building a small house. Oh, the Property Brothers.
Oh, he was on that?
Yeah, he was. His longtime makeup artist. He helped the brothers to create something for his makeup artist in their backyard.
That's amazing.
Totally amazing.
Yeah.
You would only find movie stars doing commercials in foreign markets where they knew Americans would never see their commercials.
Yeah. That really didn't change until maybe the late 90s. I remember when Brad Pitt appeared on Friends for a couple episodes, and that was a huge deal.
Oh, yeah.
That was huge.
Yeah, amazing.
Speaking of the 90s.
Yes, speaking of the 90s, let's move into my segment, What We Do in TV and Movies. This is Overlooked Vampire-themed movies and TV shows. So we talked about the 80s. 87, we had The Lost Boys, which led us into the 90s and a plethora of vampire movies. We'll start with Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Kristy Swanson, Luke Perry, Donald Sutherland, Rutger Hauer. Oh, I love that actor. Hilary Swank and Paul Rubens was in it.
He was a member of the council.
That's right. Now, I got to tell you, my friend and I went to see the movie, and we were in the theater for about 20 minutes and left. Hated it.
Oh my God, really?
So I have never seen past the beginning of the movie.
Rubens is what you're watching it for, and he shines toward the end.
Okay. All right. So then I'll add it to my list. Also in that year. Also in that year, Francis Ford Coppola's adaptation of Bram Stoker's novel. So it was Bram Stoker's Dracula with Keanu Reeves and Winona Ryder.
And Gary Oldman, man, you got to give credit.
Oh, that's right, Gary
due.
Oldman. Yes,
he was Dracula, and that was a tour de force performance.
It definitely. And then other big stars, Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt and Kirsten Dunst, an Interview with a Vampire,
also members of
in
the
1994. George Clooney was introduced to the cinema world in 1997's From Dusk Till Dawn.
Oh my God, that's right.
That's going
forgot
way
about
back.
that one.
Yeah.
Wow. Which also inspired a TV show.
And then we know 1998, half vampire, half mortal, Blade. But there's one movie that I've never seen, but I was so intrigued. It's called Nadja.
Thinking of the same one.
From 1994.
It's called Nadja?
Nadja. Shot at night in Manhattan and Brooklyn. Much of the film is shot on a PXL 2000 by Fisher-Price. Does that ring a bell to you or anyone else? The toy company? Well, the toy company. In the late 80s, early 90s, they made a video camera where you would use cassette tapes as the recording medium. It was a very low quality black and white. Wow. But that's what they shot this movie with. I haven't seen it, but I am so intrigued. And the soundtrack features Portishead and My Bloody Valentine. How can you get more 90s than that?
Pretty 90s. I would say the more 90s. No, I think it was 2000s. When was what was Anne Rice's
Queen of the Damned?
Yeah, when was that?
I
think that was early 2000s.
Yeah, it was okay.
We won't talk about that.
All right.
Sorry, I keep
maybe
thinking
we'll
of the
move
wrong
on
decade.
to 2000s the next time. So I didn't see that. And then we have comedy vampire movies, Vampire in Brooklyn, Bordello of Blood, and then Mel Brooks's Dracula Dead and Loving It.
And that was with Leslie Nielsen, right?
That was with Leslie Nielsen, yeah.
One of the best Draculas.
Yes.
Like Gary Oldman, and then maybe a few others, and then Leslie Nielsen. Like the movie's ridiculous, but Leslie Nielsen, great job.
Well, you know what's amazing about Leslie Nielsen is that he was a dramatic actor back in the 50s and 60s. He gets co-star in this movie from 1979 called Airplane, plays the straight man in a highly comedic film, and goes on to do all of these amazing shows as the straight man in a lot of similar movies.
Yeah, because he's a master of the craft. Like he can deliver everything as earnestly and straightforwardly, despite how absurd the circumstances are.
Right.
So Dracula, it's ridiculous, but he's Dracula.
Yeah, it's amazing. So anyway, we could go on talking about 90s forever.
Well, and I'm glad you ended with that example because that's what this show is. It's absurd circumstances, but these are real vampires. So.
Speaking of absurd, it is absurd. I haven't yet talked to everybody out there who's been watching us live on our YouTube channel or the people who are listening to our podcast only version. Thank you for that. We are the ESPN of TV Talk, and we so appreciate you guys following this show, following Kevin's other shows, my other shows, and all of the other programming on AfterBuzz. We want you to keep watching us. Let us know what you think. So give us a shout out on the Instas and the Twitters and the Facebooks and the MySpaces and the everything else. Go back in time. Go back to Friendster and talk about AfterBuzz. No, we weren't around that early. But if you guys are watching us on YouTube, leave comments below. Join our chat. And if you're listening to us, leave a comment. We really appreciate it. And so we want to thank you guys for watching. I'm taking a look at the chat.
Yeah, there's currently a debate about what Celeste was actually vaping since it wasn't blood. When she mentioned that, I was like, oh, that's brilliant. I kept thinking of like an Ethan Hawke movie where he was a vampire and like people put it in their Starbucks or whatever. I was like, of course there would be this underground like vaping ring for blood. I don't know how it would work, but of course it exists, and of course it doesn't really exist. And my guess, though, since everyone's posing the question, is it's strawberry flavored water, something easily recognizable.
Well, you could put in red food coloring with anything.
Yeah, that's true.
So that's true. And I just have to end when I think of the 90s, I think of Ethan Hawke. When I think of Ethan Hawke, I think of the 90s. So
next decade, when we talk about the 2000s, I'm definitely going to have you mention his film.
Okay, got it. All right, perfect. All right, so let's finally move on to our last thing of the evening: predicciones or predictions.
All right, I've been running this train about Guillermo owning who he is. And I'm gonna have to say that I give up, and I don't think he's ever going to be a vampire. Just from the evidence we've seen in this episode, I've talked about that. But I don't think he's going to be a hunter either. I feel like at the end of this episode, he finally made some progress with Nandor. Nandor made some progress as a person, and he picked him up gleefully, but then he dropped the gift he gave him. It's like, I'm not going back. It's just going to be the same thing. Their relationship is so abusive that I'm like, it's just going to be the same old game day in and day out. They're never going to change.
Right. It does make me wonder, with a new season 3, how do you continue the stories? I mean, they're fun to watch, but really the only through line has been Guillermo's story.
But like, exactly, there hasn't been an overarching plot for season 1 or season 1 leading into season 2. Like, none of it matters. Someone posted at the beginning of our chat about how did Colin Robinson escape the troll? It doesn't really matter. It had no effect on where he is today. So that's just how the show is, which I don't care. This show is fun to watch. I'm glad that these vampires and one familiar live in this house. I don't want the dynamic to change at all because it's gold. So I don't need it to change. I just don't think it will.
Yeah. And, it's hard to tell with where Guillermo and Nandor are going to end up at the end of the season. Nandor's coming out of his shell a little bit, his casket shell. And I think we've seen Guillermo outside of the house kind of stick up for himself in a way, become his own man, but not with Nandor. So there's, it's interesting because Nandor knows or has that hint that Guillermo is a vampire slayer or something like that.
You think he's going to lead a double life now?
It's possible. That's what I'm surprised that we haven't yet gone back to Nandor really facing Guillermo and saying what's going on here. But Nandor also doesn't want to stir up any trouble.
Nandor is focused on Nandor. This is what it is.
Yes.
He really doesn't care outside of that.
As they all are. Right. Billie Jean Girl 24 says, I predict we'll finally see some actual witches on the show.
We haven't seen witches. We've seen trolls and others that escape me right now.
Wolves ghosts in the first season.
Yeah, we had wolves, ghosts,
curse,
zombies even.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
But not witches. We know they exist in this universe because of that stupid hat, but we haven't seen one.
Ooh, that would be awesome. So that's something definitely to look forward to, our witches. All right, Kevin, where can we all find you on the socials?
Funny, I just finished that show about witches, so now I'm just straight up vampires from now on.
Okay.
You guys can find me on Twitter at Kevin Allen Says, at Instagram at Kevin Allen Graham.
Perfect. And what other shows are you doing right now with AfterBuzz?
Right now, none. Motherland Fort Salem has ended, so I'm just purely committed to what we do in the shadows. But next week, or actually no, this weekend, we'll be starting with Space Force.
Ooh, awesome.
Yeah, completely different subject matter.
Very nice. I love the space, so I'll be tuning in. You can find me on Instagram at Lauren Kling, LORENKLING. I need to sign up for some more shows because it's almost time for June shows to come out. And right now, this is all I'm on. So where should we go? Keep the conversation going on the YouTube channel. From everybody at AfterBuzz TV, thank you guys. See you next week.
Our founder, Kevin Undergaro, and me, Maria Menounos, would like to thank you for tuning in to AfterBuzz TV. Remember, we're not just the first, we're the biggest in the world, and we're the only destination for all your favorite TV shows. Whatever you crave, we've got it. So go to AfterBuzzTV.com and check out our lineup. Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.